Hey, listen, let's start out with Layne Hatcher, because I got to, again, you know a lot more about this than I do, but I quite frankly was floored. First of all, I don't understand why Alabama didn't get a quarterback in the last recruiting cycle. I don't know what happened there. It was part of that deal where they just very rarely does Alabama mess up in recruiting, but in that late signing period, they messed up a little bit. They were left holding scholarships, didn't take a quarterback. I guess I get it from the standpoint of an insurance policy, but here's a guy who's gray shirting at Arkansas State. Now, somebody called me up Friday night TV station, said, do you think he's an SEC quarterback? And I said, no, I don't, because I think if you were an SEC quarterback, you would have been signed in the SEC in the last recruiting cycle. I'm not saying he doesn't have some good numbers and some intangibles, but, quite frankly, this was a guy who was gray shirting at Arkansas State. Give me the process, how he wound up on scholarship at Alabama for the 2018 season.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting situation. It's kind of a situation where you don't really see happen too often, especially at Alabama. But it's along with the situation that Alabama needed a quarterback, and they looked everywhere. I mean, I think they turned over every rock in every corner of the country trying to find one player that they could just bring in, and not necessarily to become a major contributor or to compete for the starting job right away or anything like that. Alabama needs depth. They need some extra players. They need some depth in that quarterback room, and they need to push some of these guys. And obviously, there's some good competition there with Mac Jones and Tua and Jalen. So you got three solid quarterbacks right there, but. What happens if somebody does decide to transfer? And I think that's the biggest thing that Nick Saban and Dan Enos and the rest of that coaching staff had to consider was if there was a possibility of somebody transferring at some point, whether that before this season, after this season, or just whatever. You need to get a little bit of depth, and this is also a situation where Alabama has some space on the team. They've got some open scholarships. Now, from talking to Layne last week, it did not seem like he's going on immediate scholarship. And he wouldn't tell me the situation. I don't think he's told anyone the situation. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, well, Alabama flipped a Arkansas State gray shirt." Well, they did, but I don't think it's really taking away a scholarship, at least not at this time. I think it's a situation where Alabama's kind of working with them, and it may be a gray shirt situation. It may be an invited walk-on situation. I'm not sure the exact thing because, frankly, Layne wouldn't explain that to us. Layne said that he couldn't really talk about the situation. He said that it was a better situation than Arkansas State, so you have to think it's a little bit better than a gray shirt, but what's better than a gray shirt? Well, it's a regular scholarship. But from talking to him, it didn't seem like he was on a regular scholarship. So it's hard to figure out exactly what he's on. And I think Alabama may be the same way. Alabama may have said, "Hey, listen, we go ahead and come on over, and once we kind of figure out this whole situation, we'll maybe we'll put you on scholarship." And I think he was fine with that. And obviously had a great high school career, played at a great high school football program, had over 15,000 passing yards, won 4 state championships during his high school career at Pulaski Academy. So it's not like he's just some random quarterback that nobody had ever heard of. Now, of course, he didn't have any offers, but he did have a lot of numbers in high school, and maybe he can put up some. I'm not saying he'll put up those kind of numbers at Alabama, but maybe he'll put up some fight and some good competition for guys like Jalen and Tua and Mac Jones once he arrives on campus.
Obviously, Dan Enos is the key here, right? I mean, Dan Enos was the offensive coordinator at Arkansas. He knew of Hatcher at Pulaski Academy. I'll be honest with you. Yesterday, when Nick Saban was asked about him at the SEC spring meetings, he said, "Who?" I mean, it had to remind him that it was the quarterback. I mean, clearly he didn't. When they said the name, it didn't even register with him. But Dan Enos is why he's here, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. Layne told me, he said that he'd been in contact with Dan Enos prior to Dan Enos' arrival at Alabama. He had gone to a few camps at Arkansas through his high school career, had met him, had worked with him, and really liked him a lot. And said that Alabama, Dan Enos started contacting him once he got to Alabama, and just kind of kept an open line of communication. And they went and saw him during the spring, went and watched him throw, and decided. Once Gardner Minshew decided not to go to Alabama, went to Washington State instead of once he graduated from East Carolina, decided not to go to Alabama, went to Washington State. Alabama said, okay, well, we've got to look every direction and see if we can bring in any sort of quarterback. And we're in May right now. Not a lot of quarterbacks that are still out there in the 2018 class who aren't signed, and Layne Hatcher was one of those kids who was still out there that was not signed, and so they said, okay, well let's talk to him, see if we can get him to get on board here.
Well, certainly you've explained it well, and you're right. I mean, to go through a season with just 3 scholarship quarterbacks is less than you want, particularly with the thoughts that if it doesn't go Jalen's way, he might transfer. So I understand that. Let me ask you this to backtrack a little bit. What happened? And I know that we've discussed before. They were left holding the bag on some scholarships, which is not what the plan was. But why in the world did it? Nothing against Layne Hatcher, but clearly there were higher rated, better prospects available in the class of 2018, and Alabama somehow didn't sign a quarterback the last cycle. What happened there?
Well, I think Alabama looked at it and said, quarterback is not a very important position for us this year. And even though quarterback, ever since Nick Saban's been at Alabama, it's always been, we're going to get a quarterback. Every single class, we're going to sign at least one quarterback. And they didn't really do that this past year. They were kind of looking at other positions. They knew it was going to be a smaller class, so they were trying to they were trying to work on other positions, defensive back, defensive line, and trying to get some key players at those positions, and not, and save the scholarship and not take a quarterback in last year's class unless it was an elite player. And they really went after, those top guys like Emory Jones, Jack Tuttle, who signed with Utah. And obviously there were some other top guys that were out there. I mean, they also recruited Trevor Lawrence. Even though Trevor Lawrence was never going to flip his commitment from Clemson, they still recruited him and tried to get him, to at least visit Alabama. And there were some other guys out there that they were trying to get, and it just didn't happen. And, they really only recruited, really probably only about 6 or 7 quarterbacks throughout the entire year. And I think most of those quarterbacks looked at the situation and said, there's absolutely no way I'm going to Alabama with Jalen Hurts. And especially after Tua threw that, had that unbelievable second half of the national championship, they saw 2 young quarterbacks along with Mac Jones. And, a lot of quarterbacks, they want to go somewhere where they can compete for playing time right away. Alabama wasn't going to be the place for most of those guys. So Alabama missed out on quarterbacks, didn't really go after anybody else once they missed on some guys, and then just decided not to sign one. So, they still looked around. Obviously, they looked at some graduate transfers. Gardner Minshew, was one of those guys they liked a lot and was, a very, very good quarterback that they thought they were going to bring in. But obviously, Gardner Minshew definitely looking for a place he could compete right away as well and play. And I don't think he was going to get that, even though he was going to have, obviously, Nick Saban, never going to name a starter at quarterback position until the season starts. And even after the season starts, he doesn't do that. He would be saying that Gardner Minshew was going to have to be competing for time, but we all know that it was going to be Jalen Hurts or Tua starting at the quarterback position. So, Gardner made the best decision for himself, went to Washington State, and this is the outcome. Alabama ends up with this kid from Arkansas, Layne Hatcher, who's obviously had a great high school career and was going to go to Arkansas State. Now he's going to Alabama, and I don't think it's I don't think it's a bad situation for Alabama in terms of, is Alabama giving a scholarship away that could be used for another position such as, defensive line or linebacker or defensive back. That's kind of been a little bit of gripe on our recruiting board, on BamaInsider.com, as, why are we giving a scholarship away? I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's just a situation where Alabama felt good about it one way or the other and just decided to go ahead and move forward with it.
Yeah, no doubt. Minshew left Alabama holding the bag a little bit, and that probably more than anything else led to Layne Hatcher winding up here in Tuscaloosa. Reichard, the kicker out of Hoover, committing last week, a great prospect, but potentially next season, you don't see a situation where teams have three quarterbacks on scholarship very often. Alabama did. They got to a fourth. And you certainly don't see a situation where teams have two kickers on scholarship. That looks like it could be the case next year with Bulovas, who's just a redshirt freshman, and now Reichard coming in. I know you like Reichard a lot, but how unusual is it to scholarship two kickers?
It's unusual, but at the same time, Alabama was not going to pass on him at all. I mean, he's the top kicker in the country. Chris Saylor, who's world-renowned known kicking coach, said he's the best high school kicker that he's seen in all his years of evaluating kickers. So, that's saying a lot. And Alabama would be kicking themselves down the road if he ended up going somewhere else and was making game-winning field goals and had an unbelievable career at another school in the SEC. And Georgia was actually number 2. So imagine Alabama playing Georgia in the SEC championship for the national championship 3 or 4 years down the road, and you're having to deal with him on the other side of the ball. So there was no chance that Alabama was going to let that one go, and they absolutely love him. They think he's one heck of a kicker. Obviously, he has an unbelievable resume, and Hoover High School, and at Hoover High School, Alabama's also recruiting George Pickens, his teammate, 4-star wide receiver, currently committed to Auburn. Was receiving an offer from Alabama just a few weeks ago. So I'd kind of keep an eye on that one as well, see if Alabama's able to get in on that with Will Reichard's commitment.
Wrapping up with Andrew Bone. You can follow him on Twitter at Andrew J. Bone, of course, at Rivals.com, BamaInsider.com. All right, 14 commitments for Alabama already in the class of 2019. We mentioned Reichard. Of course, we talked last week about Antonio Alfano, the big defensive lineman. Who's on commitment watch? Anybody close? Of course, camp's coming up in June. Anybody you think that may pull the trigger for Alabama soon, Bone?
Well, you got to watch out for the camp coming up. The Alabama's got a really busy month coming up in June. You've got the 2 O-line, D-line camps. You have 2 high school camps. You have the special teams camps, which is you already have your special teams commitment in Will Reichard. And then you're going to have the Champions Cookout, an event that Alabama does has done the last 3 years. They invite their top kids, top targets to Tuscaloosa for a cookout with their families, play games and stuff like that. That's going to be on June the 22nd. So you never know what can happen over the course of the next month. I think it's going to be a big month for Alabama. Could see several commitments. Who's on commitment watch? It's hard to say. It just depends on who ends up making it to campus this month. A guy that I'd really keep an eye on, though, is Milton Wright. He's a 4-star wide receiver out of Louisville, Kentucky. Alabama doesn't have any commitment yet from the wide receiver position, but he's one of their top tier kids that a lot of people aren't talking about. He's 6'3", 190 pounds. Been a big target for the Crimson Tide. Josh Gaddis absolutely loves him. New wide receivers coach. So I'd keep a pretty close eye on him. Alabama's going to have a lot of defensive backs on campus next month, especially guys from the state of Texas. Marcus Banks taking an official visit to Alabama is going to be deciding in June. So I think it's probably between Alabama and Texas A&M for him. Loves Alabama, loves Nick Saban. Talked to Nick Saban during the first round of the NFL draft. So was a really big fan of that. So I think we're going to see a lot of out-of-state commitments in the next month. Probably won't see any in-state commitments. As Clay Webb plans on waiting until December. if Alabama were to potentially flip George Pickens down the road, going to happen down the road. But we're kind of looking at out-of-state guys right now. 14 commitments. I'd be very surprised if Alabama's not up to 18, 19 commitments by the end of the summer.
All right, and we know this, Bone. Whenever a commitment happens, you'll have it, right?
Absolutely. Please follow me. On my Twitter handle, Andrew J. Bone. Also, please follow us at BamaInsider.com, which is part of the Rivals.com network.
Thanks a lot, Bone.
Thanks, Gary. Have a good one.